Hi, and welcome to Vivacity. This is your very first video in a series of videos that Vivacity will be offering you throughout your RTO Kickstart package. This video will be covering your ASQANet meeting and your first step into your journey of becoming an RTO. In this video, we'll be preparing you for your ASQANet meeting with your Client Liaison Officer. This includes all the different documents that we're going to require to upload to your ASQANet application. We'll also explain some of the questions that ASQA asks in the application, and we'll review all the different sections. So section 1 being your applicant details, which is details about your company structure, who you are. Section 2 is your ownership, so who are the management, who are the directors, and who will be running the organisation. Section 3 is your applicant history, so what is the background of your organisation, and in particular previous background in RTO. Section 4 will be your proposed RTO details, scope and operating context, so all the qualifications that you'd like to add onto your scope. Section 5 will go through the evidence that we need to upload to ASQANet and what we will be providing and what you will need to do in part of that application. Section 6 is your statutory declaration by your Chief Executive Officer. That's just a form that they need to complete that we'll upload. Section 7 is submission and payment and the process for that. You would have already received your ASQANet application checklist form from your CLO. In this document, it includes all the questions that we're going to go through today in this video that we need answers to. What this video will do, and it's best if you watch this video before you complete the ASQANet application, but if you haven't, that's fine. You can go back through and review it following watching this video. But when you watch this video, it'll explain all the different areas on the ASQANet application and including what's on this application form. So you might want to have this ASQANet application form in front of you whilst we're going through the video, because then you'll get a better understanding of what we're putting together for your application online. In section 1, we'll be uploading all sorts of information about your applicant details. This includes your ABN, your legal entity, if you have a company number, if you have any trading names listed, where your head office will be, and your principal place of business. During this video, we'll be showing you a series of screenshots that we've taken from the ASQANet application, and this is one of them. This is the screenshot of the applicant details. This is what we'll be entering into onto the ASQANet application, and everything that's in your checklist directly relates to this ASQANet application. So in your applicant details, we include your company details. So these are things like your ABN, your legal entity, company, type of legal entity, all those sort of things. It's really important that you must have an ABN set up currently, and it should be in place. Now, you may have a range of ways that you want to set up your company. This could include a proprietary limited, it could be a sole trader, it could be a range of ways that you've set up the company. You might have an existing company already in place that you may want to use. When putting together your application for initial registration, you need to consider whether your exit strategy with your organisation. So if you currently have a company in place and now you want to set up an RTO, you need to consider whether you want to put that RTO under the legal entity of the current company that you have in place, or do you want to set up the RTO under a separate entity as separate from the current organisation. My advice would be to set it up as a separate entity. And the reason why is so that you have an exit strategy if you decide to sell the RTO. Because if you decide to sell the RTO down the track and it's currently listed under your current company, you're going to have to sell your current company with that RTO. Or it's actually quite laborious to separate the two companies. So it's actually quite much easier if you set them up as a separate entity. The other reason why you may want to set it up as a separate entity is registered training organisations are GST free. So you might want to gain the benefits of being GST free with the separate company. There are also tax benefits if you put it under a current company, but this you'll need to get in contact with your accountant to find out what the structure would be. Most accountants don't know that registered training organisations are GST free, so you might want to highlight this to your accountant if you're going out to visit your accountant. Now, your business structure. So you'd have an ABN, or if you're a sole trader, you may not have a company number, but you should have an ABN in place. As I stated, there's a number of legal entities that you could select. On your application form, you can select one of those. If you have any questions about your legal entity, you should ask your CLO. Your registered trading name could be different from your company name. Now, your company name may be ABC Proprietary Limited, and your trading name may be trading as Joe's Training Company. Now, or you could have the other way around where you're ABC Proprietary Limited and your trading name could be ABC Training. What I recommend is that you set up the legal entity name as the name of the training organisation that you wish to have down the track. So I would set it up, if it's going to be Joe's Training Company, then I'd have Joe's Training Company Proprietary Limited. But that's up to you. It's really how you want to set up the company. It does make it easier if you set up the Proprietary Limited company as the name that you want the RTO to be. And the reason why for that is because with ASQA, they will deal with you as your legal entity name, not your trading name. And you'll also be listed on training.gov.au as your legal name, not your trading name. You can, although, do a search and you will be able to find the trading name as well on training.gov.au, but it is best to have it under your entity name. But in the end, it's up to you how you want to set it up. This is just our advice to you. The address of the head office of the entity applying for registration, this should be the head office of your operations. All your mail will go to this. It can't be a PO box. It has to be an actual site. You could use, if you don't have a premises at the moment, you could use your accountant's address, or you can use your home address. If that head office is going to be home address, that's fine. If you currently have an office and a site, I would use that as your head office site. This will also be listed on training.gov.au. So you want to have an address that you're fine with having listed on training.gov.au. The principal place of business or entity applying for registration, this is if you have another place that's separate from your head office that you're also going to be doing your business from. So you might want to have your head office in Sydney, but you do your training in Parramatta, for example, and you might have a training headquarters there. So it might be that you have the heads and your CEO, and that's normally where the head office is where the CEO is, in a separate office from where you're going to be delivering the training. If you have any questions around that, just ask your client liaison officer who can help you with differentiating those. In section 2, we'll be covering the ownership, management, structure and control of your organisation. This includes who are the natural people within your organisation, other entities, non-owners, if you have any existing operations within Australia or outside of Australia. So this is the page we'll be completing online, where we'll be including all this information about your structure. Okay, so what does all this mean? Well, 2.1 is the details of your natural person. So this includes everyone that is listed on your historical statement with ASIC. So you'll need to get your historical statement. We're going to need that to upload to ASQAnet as part of one of your forms. So you'll need to include everyone that is listed on your historical statement as a natural person. Now, other entities who are not natural persons, it might be people on your company that are another company that is part of your management structure on ASIC. So you could have Joe Bloggs, Jenny Smith, and ABC Proprietary Limited as listed on your historical statement as owners of your company. So you would have to include that as ownership in your application, so as per the form that we have on there. So this includes other companies that may have a stake in the business and is also listed in historical statement. 2.3 is non-influential owners. So this includes your management team. So it might be a RTO manager that you have in place. It might be training managers that you have in place. So these people are management in your RTO, but they're not going to make final decisions within your organisation. The final decisions will go to the other people listed in 2.1 and 2.2, but 2.3 are people who are going to make management decisions, but they don't make the final decision. In 2.4 and 2.5, ASQA want to know what is your existing business. What do you currently have operating in Australia? And if possible, you may have some operating outside of Australia. Now, if you don't have an existing business running now, you don't need to worry about this. We don't need to actually answer this question. But if you currently have a business in place in Australia or overseas, we need to include this on your ASQAnet application. Why do ASQA want to know about your existing business? Well, this supports your application. So if you currently own a business where you are delivering security services, for example, and now you want to deliver training in security, this is going to validate why you should put these qualifications on your scope, because you're already current in the industry, you already have a background in it, and that further cements why you should have an RTO and with these qualifications on your scope. It assists to establish your market, so you already have access to the market through your existing businesses. This should also be included on your business plan. So you should include all your existing business within your business plan and how you can access your target market for your training from your current organisation. It also enables ASQA to identify your currency in the industry. So if you're currently got business operations in this industry, we can use that as evidence to support your application to become an RTO. So it's really important that we do put all of your operations within Australia and outside of Australia. Sometimes when we also put information about your operations outside of Australia, they're also going to include, they may look at you might possibly want to become a CRICOS provider, or you might want to deliver your training overseas. If you're currently delivering non-accredited training and you might be delivering it overseas, we'll need to declare that down the track if you decide you want to deliver accredited training under your RTO status. But we can deal with that later on down the track. I wouldn't declare it at this stage, but this will give, at this stage, at 2.5, this will give ASQA an idea of where you are now and that you may possibly want to deliver training overseas. There is no problem with you delivering training overseas. You don't need to be a CRICOS provider to deliver training overseas. You only need to be a CRICOS provider, CRICOS being if you want to bring international students into Australia and deliver that training to those students in Australia, and that involves the student getting a student visa for them to be able to be a student within Australia. But if you have existing operations outside of Australia and you want to deliver training outside of Australia, you don't need to be a CRICOS provider, but you will need to have something in place to manage that training that you're delivering overseas. Now, if you're delivering it, there won't be a problem. You will be audited on what you're doing, and it will be audited on your student files of those students from overseas. If you have in future, not at this stage, we wouldn't recommend it, but in future you decide to have a partnership overseas, and that partnership may involve you going overseas to another country, teaching people from that country how to deliver this training, and then they deliver that training on your behalf. That brings up a whole different ballgame. That's what's considered a partnership. At this stage for initial registration, we do not want to be ringing any alarm bells, and we do not want you to be doing any partnerships. It's best if you get your operations up and going first so that you make sure that you're getting everything running smoothly before you take on partners. The risk with partners is they could be doing things that are non-compliant and delivering the training in a non-compliant way, and that's going to affect your registration, and it could, in actual fact, close down your RTO depending on the non-compliances that you have at that with that partner. So that's why we do not recommend that you have a partner at this stage. What I would recommend is down the track, if you do want to train someone from overseas to deliver your qualifications, you'll need to get some more further advice, which we can help you with there. It's not part of the RTO Kickstart package, but we can give you advice on how to assist you with partnerships. Section 3, applicant history. This area is based around, they want to find out whether you've actually had any involvement with an RTO previously in any part of your life. We'll go through this further in the following slides. This is the applicant history screenshot from the ASQAnet application. This is the details that we're going to be filling in. Okay, as I stated, with 3, this section is your history, and it's basically your RTO history. All of these questions that we're going to be answering are related to your involvement with any other RTO. It could be that you owned an RTO previously, you're currently a director of an RTO somewhere, you currently have or have ever been listed on training.gov.au, so that might be listed as an RTO manager, it might be listed as a registration contact, it might be a general inquiry contact, so if you've ever been listed on training.gov.au. If you've held a senior management position within any other RTO in Australia, so if you've ever been an RTO manager, a director, or any of those sort of positions in senior management, compliance manager, that's where we'd need to answer yes for that. If you've ever partnered with another RTO, so you might currently be delivering training in partnership with another RTO, so we might want to state that. There are ways around this if you are partnering with someone and you're not really keen on that RTO. We can get around that where we don't declare that at this stage, but it's always best to declare all of your partners. But get in contact with your client liaison officer and we'll figure out what is the best way for us to declare if you do currently have a partnership. Section 4 is looking at your proposed RTO details and your scope of operations. So what qualifications you want to place on your scope, who are you going to be your contact people, where you're going to deliver, so where your sites are going to be, and if you have any license requirements. This is the form that we're going to be completing online with all your RTO details. In this section, 4.1, we'll be looking at the type of training organisation that you wish to set up. You'll see on the left-hand side, there's a list of different types of RTOs. Most of our clients are going to be under the other training provider, which is a private RTO, or they might be a professional association. Most of them are going to be private RTOs. So they're where you're going to be offering training services as a fee-for-service service. The other ones we may have are enterprise RTOs. So if you are currently an organisation where you're delivering training, where you want to be set up as a registered training organisation to deliver training to your staff only, you won't be taking any fee for service. There will be only people within your organisation that will you be training. That would be an enterprise RTO. If you are going to be an enterprise RTO, this is going to minimise a whole heap of risk because enterprise RTOs don't need to comply with all of the financial viability information, so mainly the fees, so refund policies, fees that you've got to declare to the students, because you're not going to be charging any fees to your students because they're all staff. There's also community-based adult education provider. Now this may be that you might be a church or a community-based group, and you're not going to be profiting from the training that you're going to be delivering. So it's all not-for-profit organisations delivering training to external people. You might be charging a fee, but it's not for profit that you're doing. .2 is your Chief Executive Officer. We need to include all your information as the Chief Executive Officer, and this is the person who is going to be responsible for the registration of the RTO and ensuring that the RTO complies with the vet quality framework. Normally, the Chief Executive Officer is a director of the company, but it doesn't have to be. You could nominate someone else as your Chief Executive Officer. It doesn't have to be the director, but normally would be set up as a director. In this section, we're going to need to include all the personal details of the Chief Executive Officer, and that includes their home address. And the reason why we need to do that is so that ASQA can verify who you are, and particularly since you're going to be responsible for the registration and the compliance of the RTO, they need to be able to find you if there are any issues. So you need to put all your personal details. We've got to remember that your application to ASQA is a legal application to be registered with the governing body to become a training organisation that can deliver nationally recognised qualifications. So when it comes to legal documentation, and this includes your fit and proper person form that you'll need to complete, you need to put in all your personal details, so your address details. You'll also be required to include your mobile number, and it may not be your company mobile number, but we need to have how ASQA can contact you, not only at the place of business, but also at home. In 4.3, this is all the contact details for general inquiries. So this will be the person that people will contact if they wish to enrol into one of your courses. This person will also be listed on training.gov.au as a general inquiries person. For this one, you'll put down their personal details, but it's just their name and surname, and you'll also put their position, but it's also a really good idea to put the email address that will be the general email address of your RTO, so that if this general inquiries person changes, you've still got one email address that you could swap to someone else. So that could be inquiries@abcrto.com.au. So that way it's not specific to a person, but you can change that around from different people. Normally your general inquiries will be your marketing person or a salesperson. It could also just be your general admin person, a receptionist, someone who will be able to answer questions for general inquiries for courses. 4.4 is your registration contact. So this is the person that ASQA will contact in relation to your registration with ASQA. So normally this can be your CEO, but it may be your compliance manager or a compliance officer, or someone who you want to deal with ASQA. So if ASQA ever gets in contact with the RTO, this is the person that they're going to get in contact with. This person is normally responsible for compliance. They should be able to answer the questions to ASQA quite easily about your operations and how your RTO operates. When ASQA come out to do an audit, this is the person that they'll contact. They'll normally send you an email, and this is the person that they will email. .5 is your planned location of where you want to deliver the majority of your training. So this is which state do you want to deliver majority of your training. So if your head office is in New South Wales, but the majority of the training you're going to be offering is in Victoria, then you should state that it's in Victoria. Normally, this section is going to be where your head office is. So if your head office is in New South Wales, and the majority of your training is going to be delivered in New South Wales, that's the one that we should click on is New South Wales. This where we click on the states in this section is going to determine where your audit is going to be. So if you state that the majority of your training is going to be in Victoria, then that's where they're going to come out and do the audit, is in Victoria. Normally it's the head office, but it will, where your majority of your training will be delivered, and a head office where you're normally going to have your audits. But this can affect, so if you state that your head office is in New South Wales, but the majority of your training is in Victoria, then it will be a toss-up. They might even audit both premises. So they might go to New South Wales and Victoria. So to minimise your risk, I would put the majority of your training is going to be wherever your head office is and wherever it's easier for you to get to. It's just going to minimise the risk and amount of time that they're going to spend at audit. So you don't really want them to go to both sites. You want them to only go to one site, particularly for your initial registration. When you down the track, when you get set up and you're up and going as an RTO, you might want to change this and add other sites. This doesn't affect how many sites, how many states you can deliver in. This is just the majority of. So if you want to deliver in other states, that's not going to affect your application. This is just the majority that we're going to be discussing here. 4.6 is your proposed permanent delivery sites. So it's where you plan to deliver your training in Australia or overseas, where it's different from your head office. So you might have a club in place that you're going to hire, or a venue that you're going to hire. So it might be training rooms at another premises that you're going to hire, or it might be another site of your organisation. So you might have a business that's operating in New South Wales, Sydney, but you might also have an office based in Victoria, in Melbourne, where you want to deliver training there. So that's where we'd add the details of another permanent delivery site. So a permanent delivery site is normally somewhere where you'll have a lease in place or an agreement in place where you're permanently going to be delivering training there on an ongoing basis. So you may down the track decide you want to deliver at some other clubs or some other venues. That's fine. We can add those later on, but this is only your permanent delivery sites. If you could have temporary delivery sites where you just hire a training room for a term or a week or however long you want to run your course for, but you may not use that site again. So it should be limited to just your permanent delivery sites, and only if it's different from your head office. .7 has two sections, A and B. Section A is a section where we complete all of your, upload all of your details for the qualifications that you wish to offer. So we're going to put on the qualifications and the units of competencies, and also this includes accredited courses that you may want to add to your scope. In the RTO Kickstart package, we only include 4 qualifications or equivalent units of competencies in that application. And the reason why we do that is to minimise your risk at audit. The more qualifications you have on your application for initial registration, the longer your audit's going to be and more intense it's going to be. An addition to scope is much easier to do down the track than to go to audit with 10 qualifications. So we recommend 4, and 4 is only what's included in our package. But in actual fact, I would recommend maybe 2 qualifications. And this depends on the risk factor of the qualifications you're putting on your scope. Currently, childcare qualifications and aged care qualifications are high risk, and they're number 1 and 2 of the risk factors with RTOs. So if you're going to put childcare or aged care on your scope, I'd recommend that you don't put on a lot of other qualifications. You just put on, and if you're going to put on both childcare and aged care, you're definitely going to have a 2-day audit, and it's going to be more intense. It's best if you focus on one qualification area like just childcare or just aged care. So you could do Certificate 3 and Diploma in childcare and Certificate 3 and 4 in aged care separately, and then that way you can focus on that. The audit can be quite stressful for our clients. We make it easier by having our experts there with you at audit, but in order to minimise that, we recommend smaller amount of qualifications, because not only do you have to have the assessment tools and the training materials for all those qualifications, you've also got to have all of your training materials. So this includes, if you're doing childcare, you're going to have prams, cots, toys, play equipment, change tables, nappies. You're going to have a range of things. If you're doing aged care, you're going to have things like blood pressure kits, urine testing kits, urine pads. You're going to have a whole heap of things that are going to support your training in that qualification. So I'd recommend that you minimise your risk at audit by having just what you can focus on for your initial registration. Within the first year, you can add up to 10 qualifications onto your scope of registration. So I wouldn't be fretting too much about having all of the qualifications that you need, that you would like to put on now, because we can add those qualifications at a later date. It's better that we minimise your risk at audit and get you through the audit less stressful as possible. Something else that you need to remember, you need to have all of this equipment up front prior to your ASQA audit. If you don't have all of your equipment and your assessment tools and things like prams, cots, change tables, all of that sort of stuff, if you don't have that in place at the audit, it will be a non-compliance and you'll have to demonstrate that you've got that in place. It's really, really important that you make sure you have all of this material in place prior to your audit. Your CLO will help you with all of your resources and what you need, but I can't emphasise enough the two top non-compliances that we get at audit is, number one, is qualifications of the trainers and skills and experience, and that includes vet experience. And number two is training and assessment tools. So that includes all of the materials that you need to deliver that training. So that's why we put a lot of emphasis on making sure you have all these materials in place before your audit. (4.7b). In this section, this is actually a fairly new section on ASQAnet. This section includes skill sets. So if you decide you want to deliver a skill set that is defined within a training package, so you'll often find in a training package they'll have skill sets set up that are not full qualifications. It might be 4, 6 units of competency from a training package that is commonly required within industry, so specific industries. So, for example, there's actually a skill set with the Certificate for in Training and Assessment, and under that there are units that are specific for enterprise RTOs or supervisors in the workplace who will only be assessing. So there's actually a skill set defined within the training package that says if you're just going to be doing assessment in the workplace or supervising students within the workplace, you need to complete these units. So that's just an example of one skill set. There's a range of skill sets, and that will depend on the qualification that you have. Your CLO can assist you with skill sets and identifying whether that skill set is going to be relevant and it meets the training package requirements. Sometimes you might want to set up your own skill set, which is fine. You might have a selection of 5 units that are going to meet an industry's needs. We can put that together as a skill set, and we could possibly put it in this section as well, or we could put it as a single units of competencies. This section is mainly around what is already set up within a training package. We also will be adding here units of competencies that cannot be delivered within qualificational courses. An example of this is you might be delivering Certificate 3 in aged care, which requires a unit in first aid. Now, with first aid, it has licensing requirements behind it, work cover requirements. So you'll need to list that separately from the full qualifications so that you can offer that, because you're going to have to meet the licensing requirements for that single unit. So it's really important that you include all of that information for extra units that you may want to offer within a qualification. Once again, your CLO can assist you with this. As I discussed, you may have a unit of competency or a qualification that requires external licensing. So it has another body outside of ASQA that is responsible for issuing licenses or certificates within that unit of competency or qualification. So for example, first aid is managed by WorkCover. So you can get a WorkCover approved certificate or a license to state that you can be a first aid officer and that you've completed the first aid requirements. Another one could be RSA or RCG, so Responsible Service of Alcohol or Responsible Conduct of Gambling, where they're managed under the Offices of Liquor, Gaming and Racing, so OLGA, and they have licensing requirements behind those. Your CLO can assist you with that, but I've also included here a hyperlink to a website that you can go to, so on the ASQA website about external licensing and additional registration requirements. So we can assist you with that and just let us know. Normally our clients would know before we do if there's any licensing requirements behind it, but if there's common ones like first aid, RSA, RCG, security industry, well, we can help you with that. We have already worked with a number of clients in those areas and we'll be able to assist you with providing you information on those licensing requirements. But I strongly recommend that you check out this link and have a look at the information if you think you have a qualification or unit of competency that has a licensing requirement on it. .8 is your proposed operating context. So we're going to have a series of questions that we're going to ask you, and it's on your ASQAnet application form that we've already given you. And this series of questions are basically, they're just, as you can see on the screenshot here, it's just yes/no questions. Majority are yes/no. Some of them are have some other fields in there. Okay, the first one we have is it expected that the organisation will deliver training and or assessment services from multiple sites? If you put yes for this, ASQA may require that they need to go to those other sites. It's okay if you have multiple sites, just make sure they're in place. If you don't currently have those multiple sites in place, say no. And that's what I would recommend. Just say no at the moment. You just got one site that you're going to deliver at. The next question is does the RTO intend to deliver training and or assessment services offshore outside of Australia? I would recommend here that you say no to this. If you currently are delivering or we intend to deliver training and assessment services offshore or outside of Australia, I would recommend you declare this later on down the track. I wouldn't declare it now at this stage because it just could bring up other complications when you go to audit. We can discuss it with your auditor when we go to audit, and we can actually state to them there that it is your proposal that you will deliver offshore, but we just don't declare it at this stage. We can work that out later on down the track. The next question is, does the organisation intend to enter partnerships or subcontracting arrangements? With this section is if you intend to deliver partnering arrangements, I would say no. I would recommend that you say no with this section because this will ring a whole heap of other alarm bells. What ASQA require at this stage is, with the partnerships, is that you have policies and procedures in place for managing those partnerships. Now, in our RTO Kickstart package, we do include policies and procedures on how to manage partnerships, but what will happen is they will grill you on how you're going to manage that partnership. A lot of non-compliances that are found in RTOs is lack of management of those partnerships. So people take on partnerships and they don't manage those partnerships properly. And that includes non-compliances with those partnerships, materials that are assessment tools that are not completed correctly, the partners are not delivering the training the way you have set out in your training and assessment strategy. You need to make sure all the documentation is in place, they've completed the enrolment forms correctly. There's a whole heap of issues that can come up with partnerships. Now, we can help you down the track if you decide you want to enter into partnerships. We actually have another organisation called ASQAnet, where we manage partnerships on behalf of RTOs because of all the issues that we've seen with RTOs trying to manage partnerships. But as I stated earlier, I'd strongly recommend that you say no to partnerships at this stage, because you'll need to demonstrate at audit that you're going to be able to manage that partnership. Let's deal with that later on down the track once we get you up and going. Okay, continuing on. Does the organisation intend to apply for government training contracts? This is if you would like to apply for smart and skilled funding in future. It might be approved providers list. It might be Cert 3 guarantee. It might be state government funding that you'd wish to apply for, or it might be traineeships that you'd like to put in place. If you're going to do any of those, you should say yes. We have policies and procedures in place for all of these already, so you're not going to miss out on all your policies and procedures. That's all in place for all of these, and it's all covered. At this stage, I can't audit you on it because you haven't actually got any of these contracts in place. But they will look at whether you're prepared for that, including policies and procedures. But at this stage, we can just say yes if you want to. That's if you want to put those government funding contracts in place. I'd recommend that you do it. You can say no if you decide you don't want to do it at this stage. You can down the track apply and then say yes, you're going to put the government funding contracts in. And you don't even need to do a material change of event or notify ASQA about it, because you just apply for that through your state regulatory body. What modes of delivery does the organisation intend to use? So on the ASQAnet application, it includes face-to-face at the RTO premises, face-to-face at workplaces, online and distance. For an initial registration, we recommend that you do not do online. I've had experience with RTOs that wish to put online application as part of their initial registration, and what happened was we had an online expert auditor come to the audit, and then they expected all of this online content to be in place. Unless you have everything you need to deliver online, and that's not download, click and flick, that is, you actually have interactive forums, you have videos on this online forum, you have lots of different ways where you can provide an online training forum that would be giving them this very similar content to what they would get if they were in a classroom, and they've got that interaction going in there. There's a lot of requirements around online. What we strongly recommend that you don't do online for initial registration, because the audits I've been to that were online, where the provider wanted online, it was a nightmare, and there were so many things that we had to comply with. The thing is, you can apply for face-to-face or face-to-face in workplace or RTO premises, and then once you've got set up as an RTO, you can put online in place down the track. But if you are going to put online in place, you need to make sure you've got everything in place before your audit, because they will do a stringent audit on, is this a proper online course that you're going to be offering? That's why we recommend that you just do face-to-face. Now, face-to-face, it is, you're going to have all the assessment tools in place, all the training materials in place. So it's still a requirement that you've got to have a lot of things in place. If you really want to go online and you have all of these materials in place, then go for it. You can put it online. But just be warned, it will be stringent with the audit. I can understand if you're aiming at going online and that's the only way you want to deliver, and why you wouldn't want to buy all of these materials for your face-to-face delivery mode if it's going to be online. So you just got to make sure you've got everything in place for your online delivery mode in place before the audit. Next question is does the organisation intend to deliver training and or assessment services to overseas students studying in Australia? This is CRICOS. This is international students. No, you do not want to put this. We can put this on at a later date. If you do decide you want to apply for CRICOS, you can put this on at a later date. We will be offering down the track a CRICOS mode where we can do initial registration with CRICOS. We would put yes for that then, but at this stage, if you're not going to be, if you don't want to apply for all the CRICOS requirements, you'd say no to this. All the CRICOS requirements include things like you've got to get council approval for the building that you're going to be in. You're going to have support services in place. You're going to have more than what you'd have now. You've also got to have things like accommodation, where you're going to direct potential students to accommodation. It brings on a whole heap of other requirements that are not in the RTO Kickstart package. In the RTO Kickstart package, we just focus on domestic students only. This is not saying that you're not going to take on international students down the track. You may intend to deliver to international students in Australia, but not with this application, because we then need to also do a CRICOS application at the same time. So I strongly recommend that you say no to this question. Next question is, does the organisation intend to accept fees in advance from students? We say yes to this. With this question, it's up to you. You may not want to take fees in advance. All they're going to be looking for here is that you have a policy and procedure in place to make sure that the fees that you take in advance are protected. There's different options within the standards that where you can take fees in advance. The standard one we go with is option C, where you will take no more than $1,500 prior to course commencement and $1,000 progress payments following commencement. That's the one that we recommend for our clients. If you do want to take more fees up front, you can get tuition assurance through ASQAnet. Ask your CLO about that. We can change the mode so that you can take more than $1,500 prior to course commencement. But we have all the policies and procedures in place for option C, which is no more than $1,500 prior to course commencement. It's all there. The processes are there, so you don't need to do anything extra. You can say yes, you're going to take fees in advance, and we already have the policies and procedures in place to answer this. Does the organisation intend to deliver training and assessment services to school students? This brings on a whole heap of other areas. If you decide you're going to deliver to school students, that's normally a program where you have an agreement in place with the school to deliver training with that school, so to those school students. Majority of our clients wouldn't have that in place. I wouldn't recommend it for an initial registration. I'd put that on later on down the track. Once you're already set up as an RTO. If you already have agreements in place with a school where you might be delivering training to school students. Now this doesn't mean like a simple RSA, RCG course or something like that. This means you're going to do a full qualification. So it's school-based traineeships or apprenticeships that you're going to do. So it's normally things like Certificate 2 in business, where they're going to come to your premises 1 day a week, and then the rest of the time they're at school. So that's what that area means, is looking after, taking on school students as part of their HSC, where they'll be completing as part of the HSC. So if you do have agreements in place with schools, you need to have that prior to your audit. You can say yes to this, but we recommend that you say no. We can put this in place later on down the track. Is it expected that the organisation will deliver training and or assessment services to children under the age of 18? You can say yes to this if you would like. This depends on your licensing requirements. So, for example, if you're going to be delivering heavy vehicle truck licensing, they can't be under 18. They've got to have a driver's licence in place. There's a whole heap of requirements around that. What this means is you need to have a policy and procedure in place for working with children check, so that you will conduct a working with children check of your trainers. And we have a policy and procedure in place already in our policies and procedures manuals that will cover off working with children check. So you can say yes to this if you would like to deliver training to students under the age of 18. But you need to really consider the qualification that you're going to be offering, and if there's any licensing requirements around ages. It might be in your industry, like if you're going to be offering a diploma in business or management or something like that, I wouldn't be saying you're going to be delivering to under 18s, because they should be an entry requirement where they have relevant work experience before they go on to do a diploma. in anything, really. You could do a Diploma of Children's Services. Sorry, you could do a Diploma of Children's Services and have under 18 because that's a build-up course where it's got Certificate 3 within the diploma. But once again, ask your CLO about this because they'll be able to assist you with that question. But as I said, we've already got the Working with Children check requirements in there. The only reason why you'd say no to this is if you really don't want to take under 18, or it's a licensing requirement. A part of that qualification is they can't be under 18. Does the organisation intend to deliver training and or assessment services to apprentices or trainees employed under a training contract? This is if you want to do traineeships. So if you plan on doing that in the future and you want to apply to your state government to get traineeships as a part of your scope, say yes to this. We have policies and procedures in place to manage these trainees. So it's in the student handbook, trainer's handbook, and in the quality and compliance manual. So we've already addressed all these. So if you'd like to do that, that's not a problem. You can say yes to this question. Section 5 is all the evidence that we're going to collect to upload to this application. So we've now answered a whole heap of questions. We also need to upload a whole heap of evidence that will support your application. So this includes things under SNR 7, 8, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and financial viability. They've added this now to ASQAnet, but financial viability kit we actually email separately, but they're now discussing it on ASQAnet. So SNR 7 is all around your governance arrangements within the RTO, so how you're going to manage your RTO basically and comply with the vet regulator. SNR 8 is your interactions with the National Vet Regulator. SNR 10 is insurance, so it's public liability insurance. SNR 11 is your financial management for initial registration, which includes your financial viability. SNR 12 is your strategy for certification, issuing and recognition of qualifications and statements of attainment. SNR 13 is your strategy for accuracy and integrity of marketing, so all around your marketing materials. SNR 14 is your strategy for transitioning from superseded training packages or qualifications. And then we have your financial viability assessment kit. So this is the page that we'll be completing where we'll be actually uploading all of your documents. So you'll see here there's actually a section where we can upload all of your documents against each of those SNRs. So now that you've done all of this work, we will be uploading your application. So what we'll be uploading against each of those SNRs. So SNR 7 will be uploading your business plan and which we will be providing you with a business plan template and your self-assessment report. For SNR 8, which is your interactions with the National Vet Regulator, we'll be uploading policies and procedures in the quality and compliance manual that directly relate to this SNR. SNR 10 is your public liability insurance, so we're going to need a cover note for that, and we're going to need to upload a copy of that cover note. SNR 11 is your financial viability kit, which we'll email separately from this application, but we'll need it with this ASQAnet application. ASQA won't process either application, so your financial viability or this ASQAnet application, until both of them have been submitted and your fees have been paid. SNR 12 is, we're going to be uploading your certificate templates, which we're going to provide you, so we'll have all those in place for your certificates. SNR 11 and 12 is for your financial management for initial registration, is policies and procedures that are on the back of your enrolment form. Also, the enrolment form is part of your marketing strategy as well, so it'll be in there. SNR 13 is all your proposed course flyers. We're going to provide you with templates. The templates that we've provided you for the course flyers, you can make your own course flyers, that's not a problem, but the content that we've included in our course flyer template, you really need to include in your course flyer template. For the purpose of audit, our course flyer template is sufficient. It has met many audit requirements. We've never had any problems with it. If there are, we'll update our course flyer template if there's any non-compliances at audit. Sometimes they need things around, there might be licensing requirements where you need to put suitability of the applicant before they enroll into the course, so we may have to add things like that, but we'll try and cover all of those off. ASQAnet 14 is the Quality and Compliance Manual, so that's your strategy for transitioning from superseded training packages. So we'll just put the standard from the Q&C manual, upload that in response to that one. We also, so for each of those standards, we'll do a snapshot of the policies and procedures from the Q&C manual for each of those. So ASQAnet 7, 8, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. We'll do a snapshot of those from the Q&C manual, but we'll also upload the full Q&C manual that will cover all of the SNRs as part of your ASQAnet application. So, what do we need from you? Well, we need you to complete the business plan. We've provided you with a draft of the business plan, but you really need to now get all of that information in there and make sure that your business plan actually meets what you're going to do, what you intend to do. We've given you a template, but you need to add key information about your organisation. So, how many trainers have you got in place? What staff have you got in place? What qualifications do they have? What skills and experience do they have? Where do you intend to market? Who are your target audience? Who do you want to target to do this training? You need to also include in there what your forecast is. So where do you plan to expand your operations? Do you plan to get a bigger premises? What are your plans for the next 3 years? We also need to include in there your financial information. So your profit and loss forecast, information about your setup costs, which we've already included in there for you, an example of what you can use. So it's really important that you complete as much as you can with that business plan and you customize it to really meet your needs. Now, if you've got your own business plan, that is fine. You can use your own business plan, but make sure that you use content that is taken from our business plan template. So specifically around those things that I've just mentioned and your target audience and your forecast and income and all that sort of stuff. But your CLO can assist you with that, but it's really important that you customize, I can't emphasize that enough, customize this business plan to actually be what you intend to do over the next 3 years. We also need a signed self-assessment. Now, we'll provide that to you. We'll complete it all for you. We'll just need some information about your trainers that will need to go in there, your scope of operations and things like that. There's a couple of areas that you need to complete, but your CLO will help you with that. But the majority of it has been completed by that, but we'll need you to sign it. We'll also need a copy of your public liability cover note. So you'll need to get your public liability insurance in place. You can put professional indemnity insurance in place. We actually recommend it. You don't need to do it at this stage because at this stage we only need to upload a copy of your public liability insurance. We have applied for clients previously where we just did a quote for the public liability because sometimes it can take 3, 6, 12 months before you go to audit, and you don't want to be paying for insurance that you're not actually going to be using. So often ASQA will accept just a quote for the insurance, but before your audit, you actually have to have paid insurance in place. You must have the cover note in place, and we must have that to present at audit. If you haven't got the insurance in place at the audit, you'll be non-compliant. We will expect that you will have revised the course flyers that we've given you, the templates that we've given you. Make sure that it actually meets the requirements on how you intend to deliver, what fees you intend to take up front. If there's any additional fees, they need to be on there. Payment plans need to be on there. We'll provide you with as much information as what we've seen at audit and what we know ASQA auditors require. But if you have any additional information, you need to make sure that you add that to these course flyers and then give that back to your CLO. The financial viability kit will be completed through Bottrels, but you need to make sure that you get all the information required to Bottrels, what they ask from you. You need to make sure you get that all over to them so that they can complete the kit. Section 6 is your statutory declaration of the Chief Executive Officer. This is the legal entity applying for initial registration. If the legal entity applying is a person, that person must complete the declaration. This is where we upload the statutory declaration. So we will email you a copy of the form. You need to sign it, complete it. You'll need to get a JP or another suitable person to sign to witness your signature, and it should be someone that's listed on the back of the statutory declaration form, and get that signed and then back to your CLO, and then we'll upload it to this application. This is what your statutory declaration looks like. You should have already got a copy from your CLO, but that's all the information that we need to collect on there. Also on this statutory declaration, you need to include where it says I, you put your name, you've got to put your full home address, so where you live in there, and then where it's declared at, it could be at your training premises. Wherever it's been witnessed, that's where it should be declared at. We're now on the home set stretch. This is section 7, submission and payment. In this section, we'll be submitting your application. So once we've got all the required evidence and we've uploaded all that evidence onto your application, so this could be in one sitting or we could do it over a period of time. Your CLO would have already commenced your ASQAnet application. They just need all the evidence from you and all those questions answered before they'd be able to submit it. Once we've completed all of that and you've completed your financial viability assessment, we'll submit this application and we'll email your financial viability assessment at the same time to ASQA on the same day. Once we submit, we will download, so we can click on the submit button and we'll download an invoice from ASQA. That invoice we will email to you straight after the submission, and you need to pay it as soon as possible. If you don't pay that invoice, it's going to hold up the whole process. So ASQA's process is they will not process your financial viability or this application that we've submitted until full payment has been received. So you need to have all three: financial viability, this application is submitted on ASQAnet, and you'll need to have paid your invoice. So it's really important when we email this to you that you process the payment as soon as possible. On the invoice, there will be a number of ways you can pay. You can pay by direct transfer, there's BPay, there's also credit card. So there's a number of ways that you can pay ASQA. So we'll email you that invoice and then it will be up to you to process that payment. Your CLO will chase you to make sure that that's been paid because it won't progress. We'll check on ASQAnet on a regular basis, but it won't progress until that payment has been paid. It's really important that you be prepared. We need to make sure that you have all of this necessary documentation back to us so that we can complete the application. So before you have your meeting with your client liaison officer, make sure you've got all of this documentation ready, completed, and over to your client liaison officer. They will then contact you or make a meeting with you, set that meeting with you. So following you watching this video, they'll set this meeting with you where they'll upload all of these documents. So we need to make sure you have everything in place so that we can submit this application. If you have any questions whatsoever, please do not hesitate to contact your client liaison officer who will be able to assist you with those questions. Just remember, we've been through many audits, many initial registration applications. So our client liaison officers have a lot of information that can help you. So if you have any questions, they can answer those. If they're not able to answer your question directly straight away, we will have weekly team meetings where we discuss all of our clients at those meetings, and they can come to their CEO, Angela, which is me, and we can answer those questions and make sure that we get back to you with whatever those questions may be. But don't hesitate to give them a call because more often than not, it's something that someone has already asked us and we'll be able to answer that question quite quickly. Just remember, Vivacity is here to help you. We are part of your team. Welcome aboard to the RTO Kickstart package. I'm really happy to have you on board as the Director and CEO of Vivacity RTO Coaching and Consulting. This is Angela Connell Holden signing off.